on the topic The Compassionate Leader Kartick Satyanarayan. Kartick Satyanarayan is a wildlife conservationist and social activist who co-founded the organization Wildlife SOS. He is widely known as the Bear Man of India because of his efforts to rescue sloth bears and end the centuries-old practice of using dancing bears for entertainment. In this presentation, we will explore his leadership not only through his achievements but also through leadership theories such as leader-follower interaction, transformational leadership, ethical leadership, and power in leadership. Through case studies and examples, we will see how compassionate leadership can bring about meaningful social and environmental change. What is leadership? Before we discuss Kartick Satyanarayan's work, it is important to first understand what leadership means. Leadership can be defined as the ability to influence individuals or groups toward achieving a shared goal. However, leadership is not simply about authority or holding a position of power. Instead, it is about guiding and inspiring others to work collectively toward a meaningful purpose. There are four key elements of leadership. First is the leader who guides and influences others. Second are the followers who support and participate in achieving the goal. Third is the shared purpose, which unites everyone around a common mission. And finally, there is influence, which is the ability to inspire change and motivate people to act. In Kartick Satyanarayan's case, the shared purpose was wildlife conservation and the protection of animals through the work of Wildlife SOS. So, who is Kartick Satyanarayan? Kartick Satyanarayan is the CEO and co-founder of Wildlife SOS, an organization established in 1995 that focuses on wildlife rescue, rehabilitation, and conservation. He is widely known as the Bear Man of India because of his pioneering efforts to rescue sloth bears that were exploited in the dancing bear tradition. In addition to being a conservationist, he is also a social activist who works closely with local communities, governments, and international organizations to protect wildlife and promote sustainable practices. Through his leadership, Wildlife SOS has grown into one of the most impactful wildlife rescue organizations in India, working to protect animals while also supporting communities that previously depended on animal exploitation for their livelihood. Old versus new psychology of leadership. Leadership theory has evolved significantly over time. Earlier leadership theories, often called the old psychology of leadership, focused mainly on individual traits. According to this perspective, leaders were believed to possess unique characteristics such as charisma, confidence, or intelligence that naturally made them leaders. However, modern research introduced the new psychology of leadership, which suggests that leadership emerges from shared group identity rather than just individual traits. In this approach, effective leaders represent the values and goals of the group they lead. Followers identify with these values and work collectively toward a shared mission. Kartick Satyanarayan's success reflects this modern perspective because he created a shared identity around wildlife conservation, inspiring people from different backgrounds to unite in protecting animals. The problem: dancing bears. For centuries in India, sloth bears were captured and forced to perform as dancing bears for entertainment. In this practice, bear cubs were taken from the wild after their mothers were killed. Their noses were pierced and ropes were inserted through them, causing constant pain. The bears were then forced to perform by pulling the rope, which made them appear to dance. This cruel practice existed for more than 400 years and became a traditional source of income for certain communities. The leadership challenge for Kartick Satyanarayan was extremely complex. He had to stop an exploitative tradition while also ensuring that the communities involved could find alternative livelihoods. This required not only compassion but also strategic leadership and long-term planning. Case study: ending the dancing bear tradition. One of Kartick Satyanarayan's most remarkable achievements was ending the dancing bear trade in India. Through Wildlife SOS, his team first investigated the practice and documented the cruelty involved. They then collaborated with government agencies, conservation groups, and international organizations to rescue the bears and enforce wildlife protection laws. At the same time, they created rehabilitation programs for both the rescued bears and the communities that previously depended on them. As a result, more than 600 sloth bears were rescued, and in 2009, the last dancing bear was removed from the streets of India, officially ending this centuries-old tradition. This case study shows how compassionate leadership combined with strategic action can successfully transform harmful social practices. Leader-follower interaction. Another important leadership concept from our uh, another important leadership concept is leader-follower interaction, which comes from the new psychology of leadership. Effective leaders act as in-group prototypes, meaning they represent the values and identity of the group they lead. Kartick Satyanarayan brought together a diverse group of followers, including conservationists, volunteers, veterinarians, and local villagers. By clearly communicating the mission of wildlife conservation and demonstrating commitment to that mission himself, he inspired people to identify with the cause and contribute towards it. As a result, many individuals who were previously uninvolved in conservation became active supporters of protecting wildlife. So from here, Manas will continue the presentation.
To Arjun. Now, moving on, Kartick Satyanarayan's leadership also reflects the concept of transformational leadership. Transformational leadership inspires followers to create major positive change in society by encouraging them to think beyond their personal interests. This type of leadership involves creating a strong vision, motivating people, and developing innovative solutions to difficult problems. In this case, Kartick Satyanarayan transformed wildlife conservation in India. Instead of allowing wildlife exploitation to continue, he created systems for animal rescue, rehabilitation, and conservation. He also worked with communities to change the attitude towards the wildlife, turning former exploiters into partners in conservation. Now, leadership involves the use of power and influence. Different type of leaderships are power exclude, expert power, referent power, reward power, coercive power, and legitimate power. Now, in Kartik Satyanarayan's case, he mainly relied on expert power and referent power. His expert power came from his knowledge of wildlife conservation and animal behavior. This expertise helped build credibility with conservationists, policymakers, and communities. His referent power came from his moral credibility and compassion. People trusted him because his leadership was driven by genuine concern for animals and communities. This combination of expertise and compassion helped him build strong support for his initiatives. Now, ethical leadership. Now, ethical leadership is another key concept and theme in the leadership studies. Ethical leaders demonstrate integrity, compassion, responsibility, and commitment to the well being of others. Kartik Satyanarayan's work strongly reflects ethical leadership. His efforts focus not only on rescuing animals, but also on helping communities transition to ensure more sustainable livelihoods. Instead of punishing former bear handlers, wildlife SOS worked with them to develop alternative source of income. This approach shows that ethical leadership aims to create solutions that benefits both society and the environment. Now, another major challenge was the Kalandar community, whose traditional livelihood depended on dancing bears. If the practice was simply banned without providing alternatives, many families would lose their primary source of income. Kartik Satyanarayan addressed this challenge through community rehabilitation programs. These programs provide education for children, vocational training for adults, and financial support for families transitioning to new careers. Many former bear handlers were helped to start businesses such as farming, weaving, or handicrafts. As a result, community gradually shifted from exploiting the wildlife to supporting conservation efforts. Satyanarayan leadership demonstrates several important skills. First is visionary thinking, which allowed him to imagine a future where wildlife exploitation could be eliminated. Second is empathy and compassion, which helped him understand both the suffering of animals and the challenges faced by the local communities. Third is strategic planning, which enabled the development of long-term solutions for rescue and rehabilitation. And fourth one is community engagement, which ensured that local populations become partners rather than obstacles in the conservation efforts. Together, these skills helped build Wildlife SOS into one of the most effective wildlife rescue organizations in India. There were several important leadership lessons we can learn from Kartik Satyanarayan's work. First, compassion can be a very powerful leadership tool. Leaders who show empathy, moral likely to inspire trust and cooperation. Second, social change requires collaboration with many stakeholders, including communities, governments, and organizations. Third, ethical leadership, which builds long-term credibility and trust. And finally, the most important, sustainable solutions must be considered for both environment and social factors. These lessons are particularly relevant for leaders who aim to solve complex global challenges. Kartick Satyanarayan's work demonstrates how compassionate leadership can create lasting social and environmental change. Through transformational leadership, he inspired people to protect wildlife and support conservation efforts. Through ethical leadership, he built trust and developed social solutions that benefited both animals and communities. His leadership shows that true impact comes from combining empathy, vision, and strategic action. Ultimately, his story reminds us that leadership is not only about authority or power, but about creating a better world for both people and nature. Through this presentation, we hope to highlight how Kartik Satyanarayan compassionate leadership transformed wildlife conservation and demonstrated the power of ethical and transformational leadership in action. Thank you.